Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the School Committee of the Whole meeting. Today is Tuesday, December 21st, 2021, and the time is 5:19 p.m. Can we have a roll call of the members, please?
Mr. Bronson Rizzo, Mr. D'Ambrosio, Mr. Ferranti. Here. Ms. Gravellisi,
Here.
Mr. Sonala,
Present.
Ms. Thai, Mayor Arrigo.
I just want to make note that Mrs. Rizzo is present on the Zoom meeting. And that I know we're about 20 minutes late getting this meeting started. There is quite a bit of traffic. I know that Ms. Tai is on her way and hopefully will be here soon. And I believe the mayor will be joining us as well.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Okay, we will start with agenda item number 1, consent calendar, approval of the minutes.
So moved.
So I think on the consent calendar, you won't take a vote just yet. You'll take a vote on that on the floor, but you'll go through the items.
Correct. Okay, the next agenda item is the warrants that are attached. Do any members have any questions? Mr. Ferranti?
Thank you, Ms. Gravellisi. Matt, on page 1. Number 20, School Specialty LLC document camera. Do we know what that's for?
So that would be a camera purchased by the Lincoln School. Most likely something that can take any hard copy or book and immediately flip it into a displayable PDF. It was a Lincoln School instructional purchase.
And we do, as Matt described, use those in most of our classrooms, Michael. They're the thing, a student can put a piece of work under the camera and it projects on the board. The teacher can talk to the class about how the problem was solved, et cetera, et cetera. And most likely that was for more than one, because I think they run about $700 each, or $100 each.
A couple other questions. Matt, on page 8, 292, BCM controls 44,406.96, building security.
Yep, so we are slowly phasing in the purchase of security cameras where they're needed. Let me look at that account number. That's a district-wide purchase. So I can pull the PO and let the committee know where those cameras were used. But that's what that would be for.
And my last one is on page 15.
Okay. Okay, yep.
499 Aramark Educational and 500 Aramark Educational. One's for 293,000. The other was 241. It says FSMC Program Management.
Yep, so each month we cut a check to the food services management company for running the food services program. Sometimes the check will get cut, say, November 1st for the month of September, and then November 31st for the month of October. So you're basically looking at 2 months of operation costs for the food services program.
Thank you. I'm all set.
Thank you, Mr. Ferranti. Do any of the other members have any questions for Matt? Stacy's on Zoom. I don't see that she has any questions. Nope, her hand isn't raised. Okay. No more questions for you on that, Matt. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Next
Okay.
on the agenda.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Next on the agenda is financial reports. There are none. Next under the consent calendar, food service financials. There are none. Communications, none. There are no enrollment updates as for this meeting yet. Next, under the consent calendar are personnel items, new hires, retirements, resignations, and terminations. Does anyone have any questions regarding the new hires? No. Mr. Sinella, no? You see Stacy, does she have her hand raised?
Stacy's fine.
Okay, thank you, Stacy. I was trying to look at the Zoom. I couldn't
Mm.
see. So no questions from Mrs. Rizzo either? Okay, we're moving on. Acceptance of donations and gifts. There are none today. And there are no school field trips. So we'll move on to agenda item number 2, which is recommendations for security cameras. The Safety and Security Subcommittee had a meeting on December 14th. We had asked for recommendations from Jonathan Ferrara on where we may have some cameras within the 11 schools that may need updates or are in need of repairs, or even cameras that may be needed as additional cameras for coverage of areas in certain schools that have no coverage in hallways or stairwells, et cetera. We did get those recommendations from Jonathan Ferrara, and we reported them at the subcommittee. His recommendations were for an additional 14 to 16 cameras at the Riviera High School. 6 of those would be ones that needed repair, and the 8 to 10 would be additional. The other recommendations were for 5 cameras at the Hill School to replace some problematic cameras, 7 cameras at the Garfield that would cover areas of the school that are not covered right now, 8 cameras at the Beachmont Seacoast, and 8 cameras at the Lincoln. So we did discuss those at the Safety and Security Subcommittee meeting. We are hoping to have those cameras approved at our, with a motion at our 6 o'clock meeting. But I wanted to see if any of the members had any questions regarding the cameras, or Mr. Sinella, you were at the meeting. Dr. Kelly did get an update from Jonathan Ferrara on the costs for that.
Yes, and so just to make sure that there's clarity for everybody at home as well, Mr. Ferranti had mentioned earlier that we had $44,000 in the billing items tonight for security cameras, and those were cameras that the school committee had approved earlier this year through our ESSER 3 grant, or maybe it was carry forward. I forget now. I forget.
It was either ESSER or carry.
Yes, and then these cameras that you just read off now and that the Security and Safety Subcommittee spoke about at their meeting are in addition to those. And the intention with these cameras is, as you mentioned, to expand coverage so that there are more areas in different buildings that are covered. And we had asked Mr. Ferrara to do an assessment of where there was need for that, and then also to do, and that's where the numbers came from that you just read. And he estimates that because we're adding this many new cameras to the system, he'll also need to purchase a new server in order to save the data and the memory from those cameras. And all of that together would be right about the $70,000 mark.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Do we have any questions from any of the members regarding the safety? Yes, Mr. Ferrante?
Thank you. Diane, is this money coming out of the ESSER grant for the cameras, or is it on the carry forward?
This particular money is on the carry forward.
Thank you.
Does Ms. Rizzo have any questions at home? I can't see if her hand is raised. She does not. Okay. Okay, so these were recommendations from Jonathan Ferrara that we discussed, and we're hoping to move that forward at our next meeting. Okay, next on the agenda is the Beachmont boiler. Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mrs. Gravellisi. So on the Beachmont boiler, as you know, we were very pleased that we were accepted into the accelerated repair project through the MSBA for 2 projects this year. And one is the boiler replacement project at the Beachmont School, and the other is a windows and door replacement program at the Lincoln School. So on the boiler project, one of the things that we had hoped to do, and this came from our facilities director, Carl Svensson, is require that the folks bidding on that job can guarantee that they can give us lock and bar equipment, which would be a sole source requirement in the procurement of that project. And the reason Mr. Svensson and our owner's project manager and those who are consulting with us on this construction project are requesting that this sole source be approved is because that's already used in 5 of our 8 buildings. So this would be a 6th out of 8 building that is using the same software system and mechanisms to control that, which makes it easier for the facilities department to maintain those boilers. And so with your packet for the regular meeting agenda is a letter from Mr. Svensson requesting that you approve the sole source bid for that project. So I just wanted to share that information and see if there were any questions. And the hope is that at your regular meeting, there'll be a motion to approve that.
Are there any questions from any members?
I am all set. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rizzo. Mr. Snell, good?
Susan, 1 second.
Okay.
I think it's important to know that I think the costs came in are about 2.6, 2.7 million approximately, and that we get reimbursement of like 76%. So the city's only on the hook for 24%, which I know is a lot of money, but still, considering what we're spending, the reimbursement's really good. So it's something that we really should move forward on.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Ferrante. Okay, if there's no further questions, we'll move on to the next agenda item, medical data update issues. I'm sorry. Issues.
And this is one that I wanted to make sure the school committee was aware of, and also folks at home. The high school discovered that there was a problem in the student information system where a nurse was using a side of the program that sends emails to parents to say it's time for your child to have their vaccines updated. And the glitch in that program is that it was attaching student immunization records, which, as you know, are confidential information. And we have discovered 7 cases where the wrong student's information was sent to the wrong parents. And Dr. Perella and the technology team had told the nurses to not use that mechanism. So they're working on correcting that. They've been in touch with the parents of all of the kids, the 7 kids involved, and made them aware that this data breach has happened, and have reinforced with the nurses that they're not to use that strategy of an automatic email for any medical information whatsoever.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Do anyone have any questions on that?
No, I'm just happy that it was noticed before anything else happened. And, you know, parents are we want our parents to be comfortable with their students' medical.
Yeah. And to that point, Mrs. Rizzo, like that is one of the reasons that we said to the nurses, that's never something that should be electronic. There's no reason for that to be delivered electronically. We can make phone calls to parents and say it's time for immunizations to be updated. We can even send a letter home in the mail. And in that way, we can be sure that they're getting the message we want them to get without any technology glitches attached.
Yes, Mrs. Snella.
Through the superintendent, this wasn't made known when we bought the software? I mean,
We bought the software for other reasons. It manages the student medical information. We never bought the software with the intention of using it to send electronic messages to parents. It's different than PowerSchool, which is where parents log in to get kids' grade information and all of that stuff. This is a different piece of software that the nurses use to manage student medical records. But we never intended for it to be used to send messages electronically to parents and I think out of good intentions, the nurses discovered that it could do some of that stuff. And because we had been fully remote with COVID and might have been experimenting with it a little bit, but it's been made very clear to all of the nurses across the district that they're not to use that feature.
Has the company been notified of this?
The company has been notified, yep.
So they can notify other users that.
That's
to
right.
Be careful of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. If there are no more questions, next agenda item is shut down social media.
So as you know, we have struggled, we've had many challenges with social media in recent weeks between students not being kind to each other on social media. And we also had the problem last Friday where there was a nationwide TikTok that went out requesting that there be violence in schools. Fortunately, that didn't happen, but we obviously did have to respond to that. We worked with Revere Police to increase our police presence, worked with our school teams to make sure all schools were secured, and responded the way that we normally would when there's a non-credible threat. But one of the things that we would like to do, and we would really like to have feedback from the school committee on whether you're in favor of this, is at least on our school devices that we can control, prevent the opportunity to access social media sites like TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram and all of those kinds of things. And I'd love for Elney to talk to us about this as well. We won't be able to completely block it because kids who can access things from their personal phones will still be able to do that. But we feel like if we can at least block it on our Chromebooks that so many of the kids are using, we can at least bring down the temperature and at least have some time when students are not as impacted by social media. And one other thing that I'll add to that, just as we start thinking about this and moving forward, Dr. Perella held a parent forum last night, and one of the things that came up from parents was we need to reduce the use of cell phones in schools. And there's a lot in that statement. I do think that high school students can, and I don't know if should is the right word, but having their phone at lunchtime or in the hallways is one thing that is a little bit more realistic in terms of how adults live their lives with their phones and, having their phones accessible in that. I think it's different when we're talking about having them accessible in class, especially if they have a Chromebook and don't need the phone in order to get connected to technology. But I wanted to mention that in the context of this conversation, because I think it's one that we're going to be exploring more in the springtime. I know that Dr. Perella said his next step was actually to meet with the Student Senate and other students and have them give some feedback on that and then circle back to the parents before any proposal would come to the school committee. But I just wanted to raise that for you as I think it's going to come before you in the coming months. So in terms of, I guess right now what I'm asking tonight is that the school committee, and a decision does not need to be made tonight, but the school committee start thinking about if you would be supportive of a proposal to block all social media sites on our school devices. I don't know if
Thank you,
invite
Dr.
Elney to
Kelly.
comment first.
Mr. Sinella?
Delay, delay, delay. If your recommendation is to do so, we're at the end of December, January. I don't see any reason why it cannot be acted upon tonight as a late motion. And maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but somewhere the line's got to be drawn in the sand, what can be and what cannot be, and trying to be all things to all people. If this is getting to be problematic and it's not controllable by the individuals themselves, then maybe someone should step up to the plate. And again, if it's the superintendent's recommendation, I have no qualms about acting upon it this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sinella. Any other members have questions? Mr. Ferranti?
Thanks, Susan. Diane, are we just doing this to the phones of anybody that has a cell phone in the schools, or are we just doing it for the kids?
It would be only school devices, so
School
really
devices.
just Chromebooks.
Chromebooks,
And so adult phones, student phones, any personal devices would still have access.
I mean, I agree with Mr. Snell. I think it's a good idea, and, you know, I know we don't have a full school committee here, but I think that we should really take action on this tonight. I agree with that. Thank you.
Mrs. Rizzo?
Yes, Diane, didn't we have a block on social media accounts like 8 to 10 years ago? No?
No, we have blocks on sites that are harmful to children, which I would now argue these social media sites are harmful to children. But we don't have specific blocks on social media sites on all of them, and that's what we would be looking to do.
Oh, because I know back in the day when Facebook was popular with students, those were blocked also. Or even if I had my phone in the school, I wouldn't be able to get on Facebook.
Yeah.
Not,
There are-
not that I would.
Yeah, and there's some sites like that that are blocked from the network. And what we would be looking to do with the school committee support is block more of them. I would anticipate that some people will feel like we're overstepping by doing that, but I don't know. And I would love to hear from Elmi. I'm sure you'll go there next, but I just feel like it's getting to the point where it's a little bit toxic for the kids to have to deal with those sites.
I definitely agree with what you're saying. I feel like a lot of the things that are happening outside of school has definitely contributed to a lot of the actions that specifically the younger classes have been doing. At first I was concerned with blocking the social media sites because a lot of our
Robin's gonna
clubs
get you.
use these social media sites to like advertise and spread
Are you
awareness
coming in the door?
for their cause, but if it's just the
Oh, okay.
computers, then
I'm
I
in the
think
meeting.
it's all right since we'll be able to use our
Yes,
phone. So overall, I think this is a great action.
Thank you very much. That from the voice of one of our students here, our student representative at RHS. I as well am in favor of blocking social media sites from school-issued devices. And also, you know, going back to what that parent said about the use of cell phones in schools. I mean, obviously, I agree, lunchroom, walk in the halls, checking, updating, but I think that we should really, you know, kind of look into the use of the phones while in the classroom. There should be some kind of organization where the kids can just drop them into, you know, a different area that the teachers can monitor them, even like one of those little shoe racks where each one would have their own, because I know we've all heard from plenty of teachers that, you know, there's a lot of use within the classroom when learning is going on. So that's after we get through, you know, blocking the sites, it's something we should have further discussion on. Thank you.
Should we do something tonight?
Did you want to bring this to the 6 o'clock floor as a late,
We can make
mo-
a late motion at the 6 o'clock meeting.
Oh, it's on there?
No.
Oh, yeah, yes. That's what I just said. All right, so we will move that to the 6 o'clock meeting as a late motion. Thank you, everyone. Next, agenda item number 6 is athletics after the new year.
Yes, so as the committee knows, we're seeing an uptick with the Omicron variant of COVID. And Mr. Shea has obviously been in touch with all of the athletic directors in the Greater Boston League and across the state through the MIAA. And we're seeing different things happen in different districts. Somerville, for example, has the strictest policy where effective immediately, they are not allowing any observers at any of their games. Other districts, Lynn is allowing a limited number of people to attend per athlete. And what Mr. Shea would like is the committee's approval to limit attendance at games to the parents or caregivers two each, up to two each for each athlete.
I am definitely in favor of this. We can't control how people move around in the gym or how they sit. So with smaller numbers, I think it's easier for everyone involved. And if we want to have winter sports, we have to do what's best for the athletes right now. And, you know, the good part is we do have them on YouTube. So at least friends and family can still view from the comfort of their own home.
Yes, and thank you for reminding me. Mr. Shea is working with Revere TV to get all of the
Games
games
are-
televised.
Basketball.
Yep.
Thank you, Mrs. Rizzo. Any other members? Mr. Sinella?
Yes, I have no problem with taking it with the school committee, but I would assume that the director of athletics would have the authority, you know, as the chief honcho as to who comes, who goes, and who does not go. If it's necessary for the committee to vote on it, then, as was just made reference that it is televised, then no participation, just the athletes themselves. And that would hold true with, I assume, visitors. You know, anything, I think it should be anything under our domain that it be notified, whether it's other communities, their athletic directors, let that information be given to their people, not to even bother showing up.
Thank you, Mr. Sinella. Mr. Ferrante?
Thank you, Susan. I have one question. I mean, how would we get either tickets or a pass to the parents so they can go to the games?
I'm sure that Mr. Shea would handle that. We've had the situation before when we were in COVID protocols where we were limiting attendance by the number of kids per, the number of guests per athlete. And it could be the same kind of thing. I think that what they could even do on a simple way is keep a roster of the student athletes. And then as somebody comes in and says, I'm here to see Michael Franchi, that's one of his check marks. And when there are two check marks, that's it. No one else comes in.
Sounds good to me.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Mr. Sinella?
But then again, I mean, either we ban any adult participation, period. You don't have to worry about checking who is, who isn't, and they can watch it on television. So I think to simplify matters, especially it's going to be done so quickly, that no adult supervision. It doesn't have to come from the governor. It doesn't have to come from, you know, the higher authorities. If we're going to vote, I think let's make it meaningful.
Thank you, Mr. Sinella.
One more, Susan.
Yes, Mr. Ferrante?
What do we? All right, good.
Go ahead, Mrs. Rizzo.
Thank you. You know, first I want to say all the athletic directors do share what their admission is. And they started that a year and a half ago. So if it's if there's no viewers, there's no viewers. If there's only two, there's only two. But they've already started sharing that last year. So I don't see why they wouldn't do it again this year. And, you know, it's so easy to say, let's not have anyone attend. And I'm all for that. Again, I just want the kids to play. But I think that's going to be a lot on Mr. Shea. You know, last time when we couldn't even attend, I know there were other people that knew people that would come in the back door, and then parents would say, why can they come? They have no one playing. Or, you know, if you have, I'm using this as an example. If there's a few people at the community schools, they wander in and people want to know. So I think it's going to be a really tough sell to have absolutely no one. I'm willing to do it if that's the will of this committee. But I really do believe it's going to be difficult. I think perhaps Frank should maybe explore all the possibilities.
Thank you, Mrs.
And then,
Rizzo.
and
Mrs.
let's just
Crockett?
support what Frank wants.
The only question I have left is, what do we do about the visiting teams? that their parents want to come and watch them play. We thought about that.
Yeah, and I'll say that it would be the same, rule for both the visiting team and the home team. And I do want to say that Mr. Shea is the one who made this proposal after he discussed it with his counterparts in other districts and gave contemplation. What he thinks is the right thing to do is to allow 2 caregivers per athlete.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly.
And that doesn't mean that won't change. Like the middle of January, it could get even higher, as Mr. Sinella is saying, and we might have to move to a no guests at all. I mean, we can't predict this thing. It's the one thing that we have learned over the last 2 years is that we cannot predict what COVID is going to do next. But I do think that we learned from our parents last year that they appreciate, even if there can't be a large crowd, that they at least be able to watch their kids play in person, especially if they're seniors and it's their last opportunity, or perhaps they're an exceptional athlete and are about to win some certain number of points or something like that. Anyway.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. And I'd like to say I am, in favor of Mr. Shea's recommendations for the limited attendance during the games. We do want our students and our parents to have some normalcy. And while we can still allow that to happen, I'd be in favor of that. So would we want to bring this to another late motion on the floor for the 6 o'clock meeting? Okay, I'm going to add that to the late motions. So the motion will be to approve limited attendance to 2 people at athletic events. Very good, thank you. Moving on to the next agenda item, proposed new subrate. Dr. Kelly?
Sure. So this is a situation that we've been monitoring over several years, and the school committee has made several adjustments to the hourly rates for substitutes based on changes to the Massachusetts law on minimum wage. And one of the things that you'll see in your packet for the regular meeting is language proposing an increase in the sub rate for our substitutes. And the primary impetus for that was to make sure that all substitutes, regardless of whether they are licensed, have a degree, or don't have either of those things, or have both of them, are at least earning an hourly wage that meets the state's minimum wage requirements. And I can't put my fingers on my copy of it for some reason right now, but my proposal actually exceeds the required minimum rates by just a little bit. And the hope is that by increasing the amount, here it is, okay. By increasing the amount just a little bit, we can entice more people to come in and be substitutes for us. So the required minimum wage on January 1st will be $14.25 per hour. And at a 6.5 hour day, that comes out to $92.65. Where we don't meet that criteria is for substitutes who have no degree, as their current daily rate is $87.75. So it would be one option to simply increase that value to the $92.65. But in order to entice perhaps more people to help us by substituting in the schools, I am actually proposing that the no degree rate go up to $104 a day, which comes out to $16 an hour. That those with a bachelor's degree or higher go to a $117 daily rate, or $18 an hour. And that those who actually have a teaching license go to $130 a day, or $20 an hour.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Do we have any questions from any of the members? Mrs. Rizzo, I'm not sure if you have your hand up. No hand
No,
up.
I'm all set and totally agreeable to this. It's hard enough to find substitutes in today's world, but to not pay them a daily wage is ridiculous. But no, it's only a little, but it's a beginning.
Thank you, Ms. Rizzo. Mr. Sinella.
Susan, thank you. Through to the superintendent, ancient history, do they still have a central list that all schools draw from, or are the individual schools at liberty to hire their own?
So we do still keep a centralized list, which is really a list of people who have undergone the required state training and understand the rules and policies of the Commonwealth in order to be substitutes. However, each school has its favorite subs, and there are subs who like particular schools. Maybe they went to school there or taught there or whatever the case may be, and will only agree to substitute in that school. And so in that regard, schools do have their own list as well. And in addition, if a school recruits substitutes, they just call Danielle, she does an online meeting with the person, does the required training, and then that person is able to be a substitute.
All right, the reason I'm asking is you would have, and we had 16 schools back then, call in one list, and the person already got hired by one school and 5 other people are calling, and it just could be extremely chaotic. Is that still partially in effect, or is it?
I would say partially in effect is the right way to describe it. Like the schools will start with their list of people that they know typically come to their school. If they run through those and don't have enough people, then they'll revert to the city list and try to find more people from there. It's tricky because you can't predict how many substitutes you're going to need on a given day. You can predict when people have a personal day or something like that, but there are always folks who are calling out sick. And as much as the assistant principals try to get enough people on board, especially these days, we're finding it really hard to find substitutes. So they do run into a little bit of that.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly, and thank you for those recommendations to increase the pay for substitute teachers. Well deserved for them. I do not see that on the agenda as a motion. Is that something that the committee would be willing to add as a late motion to the 6 o'clock agenda?
Absolutely.
No, it's not. Right. It's, is the committee in agreement? Stacy said yes. Yes. Okay. So we'd like to add that as a late motion so that we can have that approved, hopefully ASAP. So that'll be our 3rd late motion added to the 6 o'clock agenda. Next on the agenda is the Harvard Residency Program.
So I think you all will recall, this is really just information that I want to give you. Just before COVID, we were working with the Harvard Residency Program, which assigns a doctoral student to school districts to do their in the field research project that ultimately turns into their dissertation. And Harvard reached out to us to participate again. We got derailed last time because of Harvard, because of COVID. And the person wasn't able to come and do the in-person work that was required and all of that. So I just wanted to let you know that Harvard reached back out to us, and we are working with them again to get that up and running again. And we met the candidate who wants to come to Revere is somebody who wants to focus more on the deeper learning work that we've been doing and making sure that kids have access to the tasks of high cognitive demand. So she's going to focus a little bit in that area, and yeah, should be good.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Do we have any questions on the Harvard Residency Program? Being no questions, we'll move on to agenda item number 9, which is regular meeting agenda items and miscellaneous items.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes, Mrs. Rizzo.
Yes, I was hoping to entertain, at our last meeting, we discussed the possibility of 3 directors and hiring. And I am hoping that there is an opportunity here to maybe discuss and go down that road one more time. And maybe, if it can't be all 3, if we could look at one. All 3 are very important to our district, but if we have to pick one, which one is very much desired right now? Is that something everyone would be interested in doing?
I would.
Thank you, Mrs. Rizzo. Mr. Ferrante, yes.
Yeah, I would.
Mr. Sinella, do you have any questions regarding? I believe we tabled it for future reference, a future date. You know, Ms. Rizzo just mentioned one, which all three are very important, obviously. You know, at our meeting, we did say if we did appoint all three and approve all three, that would be close to like 249,000 over budget with that. So what Ms. Rizzo is proposing right now is that we may start with one of the three director positions, if that's something that we want to entertain. And I'm not sure, Ms. Rizzo, where you wanted to bring that to. Did you want to bring that to our 6 o'clock meeting or just?
We can have the discussion here, but if there is to be a vote, that would have to be on the floor at the 6.
Right, exactly.
And then a recap of any discussion can be brought up at that point. But I just wanted to make sure there was an agreement to discuss it and bring it back up.
Okay, well, we don't have all of our members here. I think it would be something that we'd all would want to discuss as a committee of the whole. I know this is our committee of the whole meeting, but due to the insane traffic outside of the building because of COVID testing, most of us either couldn't get here or are just arriving. I'd like to make note that Mayor Arrigo just arrived in our meeting. So I'm not sure, do we want to discuss that or do we want to discuss that at a separate meeting or?
I think,
What is that, Michael? I'm sorry.
yeah, I think that we should wait until we have the whole committee so we can all have a say in it. I mean, we're missing 2 people, obviously, because of the traffic issues, but I think we should have a full committee before we do anything on that.
Okay, but with those 2 people missing, we're not going to have those 2 people at the next meeting also.
I
Correct.
believe that Member D'Ambrosio will be joining the 6 o'clock meeting. At least that's what he texted me earlier today. And hopefully Ms. Ty will be here shortly. I know she's still in traffic.
If we have a full committee, then I have no problem bringing it up.
Okay, if we have a full committee, because I think that is something important that we all need to discuss. I'm not sure we could bring it up under new business or old business since we've discussed it in the past. So hopefully we'll have a full committee soon for our 6 o'clock meeting. Are there any other? Oh, yes, Ms. Rizzo?
No, I'm just, I came on to participate because that was my role as a school committee member, but I will be leaving shortly.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rizzo. Do we have any questions on the regular meeting agenda? Mr. Ferrante?
The only questions I just want to get the dates for the next 3 or 4 months so I can plug them in my office. Yeah, school committee dates.
So typically you all set those dates at your organizational meeting which is scheduled for January 3rd. But I think as a rule of thumb, and I shared this with the incoming committee members, typically you've done the 3rd Tuesday. And so unless the committee wants to change that, I think that you could anticipate January 19th, and I forget what the February and March dates are,
Yeah,
but if
like-
you look to the 3rd Tuesday, I think you'll be safe.
Right, I think being consistent with the 3rd Tuesday of every month, which is what we discussed prior to this year and last year, gives the public, you know, a solid date as to when they will be coming. And I'm pretty sure last year we decided no ifs, ands, or buts. We're just going to stick with that 3rd Tuesday. Any other questions? Seeing no other questions, does anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
So let me ask you, I joined this so there could be a quorum. If I leave and not come back for the next one, do you have a quorum?
Yes, Carol's here.
The mayor.
Okay.
And Mayor. Okay, meeting adjourned.
Roll call.
Mrs. Bronson Rizzo,
Yes.
Mr. Ambrosio,
Yes.
Mr. Ferranti,
Yes.
Ms. Gravely,
Yes,
Mr. Sonata,
Yes,
Ms. Ty. Ms. Ty. Mayor Arrigo.
Yes.
meeting adjourned.